Hey, everybody. I'm very impressed, in fact, in some cases, blown away what I can do with a tool like a GPT. That these Gen AI tools are truly something not just for driving productivity improvements like, writing a better letter or a reply to an email or a post on some social media site, but as a tool that can help me drive innovative thinking and exploration. So I'm going to show you a technique that I call AI Contextual Simulation. And I'm going to actually build an AI Contextual Simulator for our farming problem I want to go after. I want to show you how I use this tool to help me become more effective. And I'll add that I mandate in my class at Iowa State that all of my students use a Gen AI tool like ChatGPT. Again, I want them to understand how to use this tool, how to structure it, how to train it so that it can help them be more effective. So let me walk through the process we're going to go through. So the technique that I've used to build this AI contextual simulator requires 5 steps, a 5-step process. Number one, I need to make sure I define the problem I'm trying to go after so I can provide the content and intent, set the frame for the problem I'm trying to solve. And then step number two is very important because now I'm going to start uploading content into it, research I found elsewhere or other information I found in order to start building a relevant repository of information so that the ChatGPT tool knows what's important to me. Now think about the large language model ChatGPT problem. It has access to a library equivalent to 440 million books, maybe even more than that. Out of those 440 million books, I only want 40 of them, right? I don't want the books that talk about the Kardashians or Taylor Swift or some conspiracy theory on some random website. No, I want to find the content buried across all these different data sets and data sources that are relevant for the problem I'm going to go after. So step two helps me to do that. It helps me to further refine the problem I'm trying to go after. Step three, I'm going to establish a narrative, a conversation. And we're going to use a Socratic method. And I'm going to show you how we're going to use a Socratic method in order to help us guide our exploration process. Step four is to leverage persona-based insights, persona-based prompts to help us expand the insights and gather more information. And finally, we're going to summarize the results and explore. And the problem we're going to go after is how do we help small family farmers decide what crops to plant in the next planting season? And so to start the conversation, I've already created my first prompt. So I'm going to copy a lot of prompts because you don't want to see me typing. So the prompt is we want to go after this particular problem of helping the small family farmers optimize their their crop selection process, given the set of constraints they have around profit maximization and risk management and resource efficiency and et cetera, right? They have to think about the decision that the small family farmer who's not a technician is going to have to make trying to balance all these things off. So let's copy this into a regular old chat GPT and let's start the conversation. I'm going to copy and paste right in here and I'm going to start setting the stage. So I'm going to upload this information into it and it's going to process it and hopefully get back to me with here's a structured and detailed response. That's great. It's giving me information. At this point, I'm not ready to converse with it yet. I need to go to, if you already given me a guide, it's great, but I need to go to the next step in the process. So I've set the context. Now I need to start setting the frame. And what I'm going to do is I went out and I found some public information available that helps to contemplate the different variables and factors we need to think about. If you're located in Iowa, for example, in Northeast Iowa, in Charles City, Iowa, you're trying to figure out how to optimize your crop selection process, here are some sources that might be useful. So what I'm going to do is let it figure off and blither along here. Let's close it off right here. And I am now going to take and upload some research that I found. I'm going to copy and drag into my chat GPT some of these resources, and I'm going to tell it, let's go back to here. The prompt I'm going to give it is basically use this information to guide my analysis process. And this literally, I am at this point training the GPT to think about the problem I'm trying to go after. Now, I know the real deep, nerdy tech people are going to say this is not what training is about. But for me, this is about training. I'm training this massive GPT to get focused in on the problem I'm most interested in. So I'm going to upload this information. I'm going to paste this prompt. It's going to process it. And then I'm going to let it do its thing, right? So it's going to read the documents. It's going to integrate it. You can see it's doing all the processing here. It's going to dig through all this stuff. It's now got a frame. But that's not enough. What I want to do next is I actually want to start to mine my own knowledge base. Now, there's a methodology we teach in my class called the art of thinking like a data scientist, a methodology that we use in many of my workshops at Dell, for example. And it helps us to work with our clients and my students to tap into all that subject matter expertise and tribal knowledge across the organization. It's an 8-step process, blah, 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 that goes through this. And what we've done already is for this problem we're going after, I've already built out the material for that. And I'm going to also upload my Thinking Like a Data Scientist ebook. By the way, if you want my data scientist ebook, just send me a note. It's free. I'll send it to you free. But you can upload that and immediately it gives you a frame. Let me show you, for example, I'm just going to double click on the example here. So what we've done is we've gone through and looked at each of the steps in improving crop selection, looked at the crop business assessment analysis, looked at stakeholders and expectations, looked at business use cases. We've prioritized use cases. So I've got a firmer, more framed dialogue that I can have. And I'm going to, of course, give it a prompt that says, hey, ChatGPT, use this data along with other data I provided to help frame the problem we're going after, right? To help further frame what we're trying to do. And so it's going to read the documents, it's going to process it, it's going to take my book, it's 180 pages or so, and it's going to process it all. And at this point, again, remember, all I'm doing is training it. I'm not asking any questions yet. I'm just setting the stage. I'm setting the stage for how I'm going to train this. But I'm not done yet. I've got a great start. I've given it lots of great context. It's going to go blither about how great the methodology is and how you can use it. And it's all perfect stuff. It's churning. It's already learning and training itself. But I got to go one step further. I want to frame a narrative process. And one of the best narrative frames that I have found is the Socratic method and leveraging the 6 Socratic questions that are asked. Now, by the way, I've added a 7th one because in Socrates' time, he didn't have to worry about fake news. We need to. So I've added that into the process. And so in order to expedite this process, what I'm going to do, it's still doing all its analysis. Look at that. It's actually building out all the templates for it. I wonder how far it's going to go. Modeling, it's going to go through all the 8 steps, I think. So while it's doing that, and it's good, right? It's building its knowledge base. It's building its knowledge base. What's important to them is taking the knowledge that I gave it and it's expanding on it. I'm not going to let it stop. So I want it to go through. It's going to optimize, identify, and prioritize use cases. You're going to get a little tutorial on the Thinking Like a Data Scientist methodology, which is probably useful. While I was doing this, let me back up. So what the Thinking Like a Data Science methodology does is it first makes sure that you really understand the problem you're trying to go after, desired outcomes, benefits, impediments, KPIs, and metrics. Then it looks at the stakeholders and tries to understand why this is important to them. What are their desired outcomes and what are their key decision points? It then tries to go through a process of modeling entities around which we're going to use to make decisions. In this case, individual farms and soil types and specific crops. It then identifies the set of actionable use cases that we can attack in order to help us optimize our crop selection, like optimize yield, enhance soil health and sustainability, and reduce environmental impact. Then we start brainstorming the scores and features. Now we're starting to get into the data science part. We're going to actually start building analytic scores or propensity scores or entity propensity models that we're actually going to use to help drive and optimize those use cases. We're going to go through a process of exploring what kind of algorithms we should use. Again, this is really outside the scope of most non-data scientists. But as a citizen of data scientists, you might find this interesting. It then maps the scores to the decisions, and then it figures out how we're going to learn, right? And what the KPIs and metrics around which we're going to measure success. So pretty good start. So back to my original point. Now that in the process here, now that we've gotten it to really think through and brainstorm, it's generating all this great knowledge. Now we want to teach it to think like Socrates. As it goes through our narrative process, as we start having a conversation with it, I want it to think like Socrates. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in some material on the Socratic method. And then I'm going to type in or copy in my prompt. And as soon as it's uploaded everything, I've now told it that what I want to do is I want to frame this conversation, the conversation I want to have with the chat GPT. I want it to use the Socratic method to think about what kinds of questions I should be asking to help me be smarter in my question asking, right? Think about questions for clarification, how to probe assumptions, ask for my rationale and evidence, right? So I want to train it to be logical in the sense of I believe that Socrates is probably pretty logical. And as it finishes up doing all that, which it has, which is great, let's now start the conversation. Oh, it's still going through. It's actually going through and looking through each of the 6 different questions or 7 questions that Socrates has, 6 plus the Schmarzo questions, and starting to give you questions that you might want to ask. So again, you have seeded it to help you to explore, envision, validate what it is you're trying to learn in order to help drive our objective of optimizing crop selection. Right. So there we go. It's almost done. Let's go to the next part now. Now we're going to start into the process of probing. And what we're going to do here is we're going to actually use different personas to start driving a narrative. Now, remember, every time we ask a question and every time it replies, it's getting, I use the term smarter. Now, again, the chat GPT Gen AI haters are going to say it's not getting smarter. In reality, it's getting more relevant. And I'm going to argue that to a certain extent, relevance and smartness are kind of interrelated. So it's every question I ask and every answer it gives me, it's getting more relevant around the problem we're trying to solve. So let's say here's our first prompt. We're going to say here, acting as a, let's get down here, acting as a agronomist, what crop strategies would you recommend? Right? And I always like to see things in table format. So I always say, show in table format. And so it's going to do its processing. It's acting as this ergonomist and going to figure out and provide a response here. While it does that, I'm going to show you there. You can act as a soil specialist, an irrigation specialist, an environmental. The limit of what you do here, the limit of the different personas you throw at it, it's only limited by you. In fact, you could ask it, what other personas should I be considering? What have I missed? What are the risks of what I've missed? So you can now start having this conversation with it. And it's finally gotten back to, now here's what an ergonomist would say. Remember, it's replied in table format. This is all great. We can do one more. I'm not going to do one more. You get the idea, right? You're getting bored already, I can tell. So you haven't had your cup of coffee, and I'm just almost done with mine. So, but as it finishes up here, I want to get to the next point. So it's giving me a great answer. The next part of the exercise, I want to do one thing. Hey, Chat GPT, put into your memory banks that this output is targeting small family farmers who are not technologists and are not data scientists. So one thing you can do in the process, I actually prove I can type, right? You can actually tell it requirements and assumptions. You can actually tell it to put certain things in its memory bank. So as it goes through its process, it'll use that and continuously refer back to that in its process. And so you can see here, it's actually updated saved memory. Got it. Future outputs on crop rotation, blah, blah, blah. So as you're going through the process, you say, well, I want to, I always want, for example, when I'm doing lots of work with with my GPT, one of the things in here is if you're going to show a graphic, if you're going to build me a visual graphic, always put it in landscape mode. Always. Right. Because the 99% of the time I'm going to put my stuff into a slide. All right. So now we've learned about memory, which is a great feature, which I stumbled upon, but smarter people already knew about it. And you can use these persona-based prompts to expand the knowledge. Remember, the more you're working with it, the more questions you're giving it, the more challenges, the more like Socrates you're becoming, the more relevant, the more smarter it's becoming. So now let's really get down to the facts. Okay, let's tell me a prompt. Okay, hey, I got a planting season coming up in spring of 2026 in Charles City, Iowa. I'm going to type this prompt in. I'm going to say, have it tell me what crops do you recommend, considering profitability, soil health, market conditions, et cetera. Show in table format, but also include your rationale. Right? I want to know why it's recommending what it's doing. And as we get back to this, I can challenge rationale. I can say, tell me which rationale you think is most relevant. Show me your sources for that rationale. I can have it score and rank things for me. So well, it's going through this process here and it's now churning through everything you got. So it's going to take a bit more time. And one thing I have noticed is the more that I upload into my chat, the longer it takes. So that's why it's useful to have, a bottle of water nearby or a donut or a cup of coffee. So as it goes through its process, oh, it's reading documents again. It's doing all kinds of things. It's telling me what's happening. I'm not sure why it's reading documents, but because I didn't give it a document, but I gave it a prompt and I'm going to let it do its thing. So it's going to come back with an answer. And the answer is going to look somewhat like what I've got here. It's going to recommend by crops, by acreage. Remember, in this case, I had a 1,000-acre farm and its rationale, right? That's great. Let's see if it's come back with the answer yet. And it's still thinking. Come on, you can do this. By the way, I do have the paid version that costs $19.99 a month because it allows me to upload. It allows me to build projects where I can take multiple streams and bring them together and leverage the conversation between streams. I'm going to pause this for a second for dramatic impact, and I'll come back once it knew I was being critical of it. So here comes back with its answer. And we should get it in table format. It didn't want to be paused. It was embarrassed by the fact that I have to pause it. And there it is. Organic corn is this. A little bit different than the answer I got. And it's probably because when I first did my analysis, some things were changing. And it's interesting how much it's gone towards organic. Maybe it's because it's looking at current market trends. So what's interesting, the answer I got here was very different than the answer I got basically about 5 months ago. And as we know, the world has changed a lot in 5 months. In fact, while it's cranking its answer out, now that we have this GPT trained, let's start exploring it. Let's actually ask it, what are the potential impact of a tariff? And how does that change what crops I might want to plant? So it's still going through its process. So I'm going to ask this question. And now we're giving its overall rationale. And again, once you get this, you can challenge, you can have a conversation. You can say, well, I don't agree with that rationale. I think this is the actual case, right? Their rationale is that the average return is going to be around $490 per acre, right? And so again, you can challenge all this. I'm going to let it run through its things. I've got, as soon as it gets done here, I've got two scenarios I want to run. I won't run them both. One is around tariffs. Since that seems to be a pretty hot topic, we're going to do a little exercise on tariff. I also have one on drought. We have some drought problems here in the U.S. I want to understand how drought impacts what crops I might want to plant. So again, let's see if it's done. It's warning me that I have to spend more money. I'm not going to. I'm going to give it my next prompt. I'm going to delete the prompt. Now I'm going to ask it about tariffs. So now I want to say, I asked it to look at the impact that tariffs with Mexico and Canada might have. I could have had China in there as well, which I probably should have. But I can go back and add that later, right? And I've asked it to produce a crop selection recommendation and overall system tariffs with a justification. So here it comes again. By the way, what would be interesting to do is to compare its original prompt, the recommended it gave, with the one with tariffs, which you could add easily, but I'm not going to do it because I think we've already gone kind of long here on this. But I hope as it finds this answer here, that what you're seeing here is that anybody can train these tools to by ensuring that you've provided the right kinds of context and focus, that you've uploaded relevant data so it's now thinking more relevant, more intelligently about the problem you're going after, and that you can use like the Socratic method to drive a conversation with it. This tool is easily used by anyone. You don't need to be a data scientist. Do you see me writing Python code? Do you see me writing any neural network sort of stuff in here? No, it's a tool that anybody can use if you follow. Well, I'll finish up here. I'm going to go back to this slide here. If you just follow this 5-step process, Define what it is you're trying to accomplish. Get some time. Tell it what you're looking to accomplish, right? Upload relevant data, both publicly available data, which you can find using Google search or anything else, or data or data that you've got about your own operations. And also upload the thinking like a data science methodology. As I mentioned before, it's freely available. If you send me a note, I'll send you the in PDF, and you can upload it and say, hey, use this as a framework for how I contemplate things. We then looked at building a narrative process using Socratic method. So it already has in its mind the fact that it's not looking for simple answers. It wants to have an exploration process. We then use personas as a way to broaden the conversation. And then we ask for a summary. Let's see what it gave us here. So there are the recommendations it gave us, right? And it's slightly different than we had before. I'm not going to ask it to do a side by side. Let's do our own side by side. Let's come up here. Organic corn, organic soybeans, oats, alfalfa for soil improvement. What did they add here? Specialty crops. They added specialty crops for local markets. Makes sense if you have a tariff that specialty markets will be important. Anyway, please start using these tools. They're really easy. The only thing that's limiting your creativity with these tools is what's in your head. Don't be afraid to ask it questions. Don't be afraid to ask it a dumb question. It's not going to yell at you. It's not going to turn itself off and walk away like a 12-year-old who's pouting at you, right? No, this is an opportunity, a tool that you can use to really explore and grow. And by the way, if you find this useful, please share it with others, because I think this is a very valuable tool that everybody should be familiar with. Anyway, so thanks for your time, and I hope you enjoy this, and I look forward to any comments or ideas you've got, and I will certainly promise to share more as I learn. I'll share what I learn with others, and be sure you share with me what you learn. Cheers to all of you. Bye-bye.